Got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk about California, Arizona, California, and we're going to talk about some huge news in conference realignment that has very, very big implications for the University of Arizona. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now we've got a lot to get to today. And first and foremost, we are going to talk a lot of conference realignment here because, again, a lot of news broke, and this is big time news right here. Big time news. Supposedly, that according to multiple sources right now, Arizona, the Pac-12 does not have the money to be able to come up with, the kind of contract that the rest of that the member schools have been looking for. Now, you might say to yourself, well, can't they get that? Well, the problem is that you're pretty far into the loop right here. And I think the big question that you have if you're a fan of Arizona or the Pac-12 is, where is that money going to come from? And honestly, I don't know. I've never thought that money is there. You look at the Big 12. Sure, they didn't get what ASU what the Pac-12 got, the Big 10 got. But the Big 12 is taken care of for the foreseeable future. Brett Yormark did a very good job getting the pieces in there that he needed to get in there. But you watch them, and you also know that they've got it's the best basketball conference in the country, bar none. Best basketball conference in the country, and you got a football team that was just in the national title game. The Pac-12 doesn't have any of that now. And you're going to be losing UCLA and USC. No matter what anybody says, USC is the marquee program in all of college. Pac-12 football. You don't just replace that. Same with same with the UCLA basketball. UCLA along with Arizona are the two programs that resonate nationally when it comes to hoops. You just don't replace any of that right there. And I think that's where Arizona fans are rightfully concerned. And the fact is that now you're seeing reports that the money that George Kliavkoff was promising just isn't there. And I think it's rightful for a lot of fans to be a little nervous about what the future is for this conference. And I've said this from day one. I believe that Arizona would be much, much better off in the Big 12 from a stability, from a national perspective. Think of it this way. If you're in the Big 12, you're not going to have games again. Arizona and Kansas will not be at 9:30 at night on a network that nobody sees. That just wouldn't happen anymore. And I think that's something that you got to really look at if you're an Arizona fan, thinking to yourself that, hey, where exactly should Arizona be going forward? That to me is a big part of that equation right there. And it's something that I don't think that you can really take. It's something that I don't think you can really take for granted, to be quite frank with you. Plus Brett Yormark, unlike George Kliavkoff, I think Brett Yormark gets it. When I've watched George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, I've come away very unimpressed. The first thing that he does when he takes over is he says that the conference isn't looking to expand, while everybody in college basketball, college athletics is looking to expand. And I think that's something that people need to keep a very, very close eye on, because that's really not understanding the lay of the land right there. Every other conference is looking to expand, and the first thing you say is we're not looking to expand. Okay. Then you've got with you move over to the Big Ten, which did under the cover of night stole your two marquee programs from the West Coast. You don't say anything about the Big Ten, but you go all after or when asked about the Big Ten, you say, well, I'm just not going to talk about it. But then you all go after the Big 12 and you say, we're going to, we're open for business and we might take some of their schools. That's just lame stuff, dude. So again, anything that I've seen from Kliavkoff has not been impressive. Certainly hasn't inspired much confidence for me. And I think that, I don't know that it's inspired much confidence for any Arizona fan, to be quite frank with you. And this is, keep in mind, we're coming on the heels of Larry Scott right here. Larry Scott, which one of the worst commissioners in, I think it's fair to say, in Power Five athletics history. To be honest with you, he was far more interested in building himself palaces than actually being on the ground. That's where we're at, though, when it comes to that's where we're at, though, when it comes to the Pac-12. Just don't really love anything about the current situation. And again, I know that football pays the bills, but Arizona's a basketball school. We all know that. Not breaking any news right there. Arizona's a basketball school, and look at the big Pac-12 without the LA schools. It's essentially Arizona and Oregon. That ain't going to cut it. Sorry, just not going to cut it. That's essentially the Mountain West right there. Now, you look over at the Big 12. I think with the Big 12, what becomes very interesting is that's the best conference in college athletics. It just is. The best basketball conference in college athletics. It just is. You look at them. They've got Kansas, which is one of the 4 marquee programs in all of college athletics and always will be one of the marquee programs in college athletics. Then you got Baylor, which has been one of the top 5 programs in the nation the last 3-4 years. Then on top of that, you got Houston entering. Then you got Cincinnati, Kansas State, Iowa State. You name it, they've got some pretty good basketball going on there, and I think that's something that you can't really take for granted if you're an Arizona fan. And I know that I would certainly love to see some home and homes with Kansas, Baylor, schools like that. That's what you're looking for, especially too because Arizona, you got a proud basketball history. And on the football side, while the Pac-12 might be a little bit better, it's marginally better, and so. You factor that in with having the stability of a conference in play, and I think that it's pretty difficult to make the case that you don't want to be in the Big 12, other than the fact that the only thing you really have going for you is that sure, it's the only thing that you really have big thing. The only thing you really have going for you is, I guess, convenience of not moving. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. So, I mean, you come up with what you think right there. But right now I look at it and I think that, it's pretty much a no-brainer, and I'm hoping that the powers that be get that, because again, sometimes just because something is easy doesn't mean that that's the right move, and I don't believe for a second that it's the right move to stay in the Pac-12, mainly because we see how this thing is going, and not only do we see how this thing is going, you don't want to be left out. You don't want to be in a spot where everybody else is having fun and you're essentially looking in and saying, man, I wish we could be over there. This is the time, in my opinion, to move. The Big 12 wants you. And honestly, I think that you should absolutely take that opportunity. If the Big 12 wants you, you hop in there right now and you say, well, nothing personal, but we'll see you later. It's really kind of that simple. I do think that, there's certainly some things that you got to work out a little bit. And again, the travel isn't ideal. I totally get that. But at the end of the day, that just kind of is what it is right there. Again, you want to be able to travel easier major airports. But at the same time, we're also at the point, though, too, where, we're also not in the 19th century right now. You know that what you can be able to do. So that's kind of where we're at. Now, let's talk a little bit of Arizona basketball because Tommy Lloyd, the Tommy gun, as he's affectionately called, another good game for Arizona last night. The thing about this squad is that they're just getting better. And not only are they getting better, as the season goes on, you can see more and more confidence from this group because you can see that everything is starting to kind of fit together a little bit. And I guess what I mean by that is that the pieces out there have come together. Pelle Larsson is obviously much, much better in that role right there, where he can be a six man, honestly. And you know what? Some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are just wired a little bit differently, and Pelle appears to be one of those guys. Where he. Pelle appears to be one of those guys that just performs better off the bench, and that's fine because you got Sed Henderson in there. We like Sed Henderson in there. A great deal. All right. Speaking of something we like a great deal, FanDuel. All right. You go onto FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege, and you can get, this is the place to bet. This is the place where you can get essentially everything right there. You can bet live, or you can bet in game, you bet out of game, whatever you want. $5 you can put down, and you can get up to $150 in free plays. That's simple, that easy. FanDuel. Again, check it out. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. This is the perfect time of the year because you got the Super Bowl coming up. You've also got basketball, or you've also got college basketball. You got the NBA in high gear, baseball right around the corner. There is a lot to like. So again, check it out. FanDuel. We'll be right back with you. We're going to talk some more Arizona basketball. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, one thing to keep kind of on the Pac-12, the one thing that I don't understand is how you have so many teams in here, so many programs that essentially just don't matter. And what I mean by don't matter is we just watched Cal last night. Cal doesn't matter in football or basketball. And on top of that, I don't think the Cal is going to matter in football or basketball. Then you look at a school like Washington State, got a little bit of football, fair enough, but it's not anything that you look at and say, man, that's a real trailblazer right there. There is, and I think that's something, there's so much dead weight in the conference. And there's so much dead weight. There's so much dead weight on the conference. And when you lose USC, you use UCLA, you lose two teams that really matter right there. And it's difficult. It's difficult to put it mildly, because I think that right now Arizona is kind of in the position where you want to be able to play against the best. And what you want to do when you want to be able to play against the best is that means essentially that you want to be able to be battle tested come tournament time. And Arizona is not going to be battle tested come tournament time with just Oregon essentially in there. And who knows how long Dana Altman's going to be there. So it's essentially Arizona and a bunch of small schools right there. That's pretty much it. Nothing else that you can really look at, nothing else that you can really bank on. Cal ain't going to help you. Oregon State ain't going to help you. There's just a lot of schools that aren't going to be able to help you. And that's something that I think people need to really keep an eye on. And I don't see it getting better. Again, you look at SMU, you look at SMU, you look at San Diego State, schools like that. That's just not going to really cut it right there. And I think that's something that you got to really take into account. Now, one thing that I think Arizona fans also should look at is that the rest of who could you also possibly add that's really going to move the needle? I don't see anybody out there that you can add that can really move the needle. I just really don't. Maybe, San Diego State helps out a little bit, but is that really going to, in the grand scheme of things, really make things different? I don't see it. Again, it helps, but there's also just there's not a ton to like there. Arizona should have high expectations. Arizona is one of the premier basketball schools in the entire country, and when you're looking at Arizona, you should say, you know what, you deserve better than to be able to play against Oregon State, Washington State, and a bunch of teams like that. You should be able to hop in there and be able to play some of the best teams out there. That's pretty much the way it is. Let's take a quick break, come back, I'll talk about what I would do. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. Now, what would I do? First of all, I would say that the first thing you need to do is you need to go to the Big 12. And what I really like about Brett Yormark is that he gets it. When there's certain coaches that just don't seem to get things, or certain conference commissioners that don't seem to get things, George Kliavkoff, Larry Scott. Yormark comes in. He's got the Jay-Z background. He's got the Jay-Z mentality that, you know what, I'm going to make things work. And not only am I going to make things work, I'm going to be brash in the process. And I think that's when he's done that. And he's promised that, and you know what, he delivered. You had a lot of people. You have a lot of people that thought that the Big 12 would essentially evaporate. And not only did it not evaporate, Brett Yormark got his guys all of a raise, and something that he promised would happen. Now, George Kliavkoff has said the exact same thing, Not only should George Kliavkoff has said all this stuff, but he's never really fallen through. You watch Yormark. Yormark's the guy that's going to be able to make that happen. And again, that's why I think that Arizona's better off there. Plus, I believe there's more money. And on top of that, streaming is something that I think can really it really hurts the conference right now. Now, the thing that because essentially what that does is it eliminates the channel surfer. I mean, everybody out there has streamed before. It's difficult for a lot of people to be able to stream back and forth from just the game that they're watching to the network, to whatever the case may be. It just isn't built to work like that. Now, again, that's probably the future, but the future isn't now. And if the future isn't now, there's a reason that the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC are not going with streaming. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is because it's not ready yet. If all these other conferences were, that are in these great financial situations, if they were going to do it, then I think that's something that I'd look more at. But it's I think right now that's just kind of the way it is, and it's kind of the way it's going to be. Now, let's talk about then what we got coming up next week, because there's a lot of stuff coming up next week. First and foremost, I think the thing that you really got to be impressed by with Arizona is that, yes, Arizona women's basketball got absolutely destroyed, but Arizona men's basketball is right at the top of their game. Arizona football is trending in the right direction. Arizona baseball, Arizona softball. I think that's why we should have high expectations. We should have high expectations. And not only should we have high expectations, there's something out there, not only that, but you should be able to get a better conference. And that's why, in my opinion, is the Big 12 is the one to, the Big 12 is the way to go. But, excuse me, but as we talk, but again, all right, we're off here. Again, sorry, I've been battling a cold the last couple of days. I will be all better, though, Monday. Everybody out there have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll be back with you tomorrow. You've been listening to Locked On Wildcats.